Mark had been on the road for 17 hours straight, his eyes raw from the glare of oncoming headlights and the staccato wipers pushing aside the relentless drizzle that turned to sleet.
Ow.
Then back to drizzle again, never quite letting him forget how far from home he truly was. His rig, a battered Peterbilt older than his father's ghost, rattled along a stretch of state highway no sane dispatcher should have routed him through. But the job paid extra, and Mark needed extra for the fines, for the pills, for the guilt that curled up next to him every time he tried to sleep. Tonight's sleep was an insult, an impossible dream. So he did what he always did. He drove faster. He'd passed 2 closed rest stops, 3 roadkill possums, and a shape he swore was a man standing on the shoulder but vanished in his rear view as soon as he checked. When the dashboard light blinked low fuel, Mark cursed the dispatcher again. The company, the crooked roads that didn't bother to warn a man how far the next pump would be. Then he saw it, a buzz of neon in the dark like a distant lighthouse. Last gas station open 24 hours. Relief hit so hard he laughed, wheezed, and punched the wheel with a gloved fist, promising himself a black coffee, maybe a stale donut, maybe even a quick nap behind the locked cab. He signaled left, though there was no other soul for miles. Took care, and turned into the cracked lot. The gas station looked alive in a dead kind of way. Tubes of flickering neon. One pump island barely lit, a single bulb above the door humming like a trapped bee. The rain picked up as he rolled to a stop beside pump 3. The nozzle hung loose, swaying slightly though there was no wind. Mark grabbed it and squeezed. Nothing but a cough of air and a faint hiss that smelled like sulfur. He banged on the pump, cursed again, then peered through the streaked glass of the shop. Inside, racks of dusty candy bars, a soda fridge humming too loud, a grimy counter behind which perched a clerk who didn't move when Mark waved. The clerk's face was hidden by a shadow, but 2 eyes glowed with the reflection of the pump's sad floodlight. Mark shivered but told himself it was just exhaustion and bad lighting. He pulled the collar of his jacket up, stuffed his hands into his pockets, and pushed open the door. The bell overhead giving a strangled ring as if it too hadn't slept. In decades, ... the smell inside the shop hit Mark like a slap stale coffee, spilled motor oil, and something underneath the sour-sweet stench of something that should have been thrown out years ago. The overhead fluorescence buzzed, but cast more shadows than light, so that the aisles of snacks and canned soup seemed to tunnel into black holes. Mark wiped his boots on the mat out of habit, though the mat itself was sticky and wet, and stepped toward the counter. The clerk still hadn't moved. Up close, Mark could see the man's skin was gray, dry like paper stretched too tight over bone. A yellowed name tag read Eddie in cracked plastic. Mark cleared his throat. "Hey buddy, pump's dead. I need a fill. I'm running on fumes." The clerk didn't blink, didn't breathe either, Mark realized in a tiny spark of panic. Then, as if a string pulled his chin, the clerk's head twitched, and a sound came out, a grinding wheeze, half laugh, half sob. "Cash only," Eddie croaked, his lips barely moving. Mark frowned. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a sweaty 20. "Fine, just turn on the pump, all right?" Eddie's mouth cracked wider in something like a grin, showing teeth the color of old tea. He didn't take the money. Instead, his cracked fingers tapped a stained sign taped to the counter. "Exact change. No refunds, no returns." Mark muttered a curse, dropped the 20 on the counter. He felt the crawling tickle of adrenaline under his scalp. Too many hours awake, too much weirdness, and too damn alone. He turned back toward the door, already telling himself this was just another lonely hole in the wall run by a half-dead insomniac. Maybe the pump worked if you didn't ask nicely. Outside, the wind was screaming through the lot, rattling the sign until one of the letters flickered out for good. Mark jammed the nozzle in his tank, flicked the handle this time. It coughed, then gurgled, then spat gasoline in a pulsing rhythm like a dying heartbeat. He watched the numbers crawl up, hypnotized by how the digits flipped backward for a second before correcting themselves. His eyelids felt like burlap. His brain throbbed behind his temples. "Just fill up and get the hell out," he mumbled to the pump. Somewhere behind him, the door's bell rang again, but he didn't turn. The hairs on the back of his neck rose anyway. He counted down the gallons. 5, ... 6, ... 7. Then he heard the whisper. A breath against his ear, so close he could feel the warmth of it. Mark, you left me here, ... He spun, the nozzle slipping from his hand and clattering to the concrete. Gas splashed his boot, sharp fumes rising. The lot was empty. The windows of the shop were dark now, the lights gone, the neon sign buzzing only half of its promise. Open. The rest flickered blank. Mark's chest squeezed tight. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, smearing sweat and grit across his stubble. He'd heard nothing, just the wind. Except it wasn't the wind now. A figure was standing at the far edge of the lot. It's too far to see clearly, but it looked like a woman, hair hanging like wet ropes around a face that seemed to pale under the broken security light. She didn't move. Mark blinked and she was closer. He blinked again. Closer still, her mouth open in a silent scream. Shit, shit, shit. Mark fumbled the nozzle back into its cradle, yanked open the truck door, and climbed inside, slamming the lock down with a bang that echoed through the dead station. The engine turned, coughed, died. Again. Outside the windshield, the woman was inches away now, her hands pressed to the glass. Skin peeling away under her nails, eyes black holes weeping a dark, viscous ooze that dripped onto the hood and hissed like acid. Mark screamed, asterisk. Mark's scream died in his throat as his fists pounded the steering wheel, each slam echoing in the hollow cab like a gunshot. Outside the glass, the woman's face smeared against the windshield, leaving greasy trails of black fluid that hissed and bubbled where it touched the metal. Her mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, and inside was no tongue or teeth, only a swirling void that seemed to suck the truck's warmth right through the glass. Mark's breath clouded in front of him. He twisted the key again. The engine coughed, hiccuped, then roared to life with a snarl that rattled the mirrors. He slammed the rig into gear and stomped the accelerator. Tires squealed on the wet concrete as the truck lurched forward. The woman didn't move. The front grille smashed through her like fog. For a split second, the cab was filled with an icy perfume of lilies and old blood. Then it was gone. Mark didn't dare check the mirrors. He barreled back onto the highway. Tires spitting gravel, breath coming in wet sobs. Rain hammered the windshield, the wipers squealing uselessly across the glass. Mile after mile of blacktop unfurled ahead, but the road didn't look the same. No signs, no mile markers, just endless dark broken only by the truck's weak high beams. His fuel gauge dipped lower again, though he'd just pumped 10 gallons. Impossible. He slammed his fist against the dash, then yelped as a new voice crackled through the CB radio, a voice he hadn't turned on in weeks. Breaker. Breaker. Mark, you left me behind. Don't you remember? You promised you'd wait, ... at the pump. You promised ... Mark's bowels turned to ice. I hadn't used the radio since the accident. It's the accident he never reported. He fumbled for the knob, twisting it off, but the voice kept coming, louder now, layered with other voices, crying, begging, accusing. The rig's cabin seemed to shrink around him, the seatbelt digging into his ribs like iron shackles. Slammed the palm of his hand against the window, half mad with terror, trying to banish the whispers that now clawed inside his skull. Suddenly, the headlights caught something on the shoulder ahead. The sign again. Last gas station. Open 24 hours. Mark's teeth clacked together as he choked on a dry, humorless laugh. He'd driven 40 miles away, and yet here it was, flickering, inviting, mocking. He stomped the brake. Tires skidded in the rain. The rig jackknifed, skidded sideways, the trailer whipping into the ditch with a crunch of metal and wet earth. Mark's head slammed the wheel. Stars exploded behind his eyes. Then silence, except for the drumming rain and the hiss of the overheated engine. When he pried open his eyes, the sign still glowed. Closer now. Of it again, as if the highway had curved in a cruel circle while he slept with his eyes open. Through the fractured windshield, the gas station door creaked wide. Lights spilled out, too bright, too hungry. And in that doorway, Eddie stood waiting, motionless, mouth stretched wide in a grin that split his cracked skin from ear to ear. In the shadows behind him, shapes flickered, familiar faces twisted by rage and rot. Now passengers Mark had left behind on countless lonely nights, promises broken when he sped past strangers stranded on the roadside. His sins given form. Mark staggered out of the cab, boots splashing in mud and broken glass. The rain hissed where it touched the pavement near the sign, steam rising like ghostly tendrils. He tried to turn back, but the truck behind him had melted into the blackness. Nothing but endless rows of fuel pumps stretching into the darkness, each one occupied by a shadow pumping nothing into rusted cars that would never run again. Eddie's voice was inside his skull now, rattling his teeth. With every word, "You're home now, Mark. You can rest. You'll keep the pumps running. For the next one." For the next one, ... Mark stumbled forward, knees buckling. The rain turned warm as it washed over him. No longer rain, but something thicker, redder. Fell to his hands and knees at the threshold of the station. The door swung shut behind him without a sound. Outside, the neon sign flickered once, twice, then steadied. Open 24 hours. The pumps hissed and sighed. Far down the black ribbon of highway, a pair of headlights blinked through the mist. Growing closer, hungry for gas, hungry for hope, unaware that at this lonely station, the only thing that truly runs forever is regret. They had been on the road for 12 hours, and every mile had peeled away another layer of bravado from Lisa. Jay and Omar. What began as a carefree cross-country escape from midterms blasting old punk rock through cheap speakers, laughing about cheap beer and even cheaper motels, had turned into a tense white-knuckle crawl through a forested stretch of highway that none of them remembered plotting on the GPS. Trees leaned so close to the shoulder that the moonlight barely touched the wet asphalt. The only clue they were still tethered to the world was the occasional mile marker, green and reflective, catching the car's headlights like eyes in the dark. Jay squinted through the windshield, his hands clamped on the wheel tight enough to drain his knuckles white. "I swear we should have hit the state line an hour ago," he said, voice thin with forced calm. Lisa, curled in the back seat with her hoodie pulled over her head, muttered, "We missed a turn. Or your stupid app glitched again?" Omar, who'd promised he'd stay awake to help navigate, snored softly, his phone dead in his lap. Screen cracked where he dropped it at the last gas station they'd passed, if that dusty shack could be called a gas station at all. Just ahead, the next marker shone bright in the beams. 66. Jay didn't know why the number made his scalp crawl. Maybe it was all the stories. Every state had a stretch of cursed asphalt, right? Some hitchhiker who vanished. A ghost car tailgating in your blind spot. Whispered rumors that if you stopped, you'd hear the voices of everyone you ever betrayed. Urban legends, just junk they laughed about during daylight. But at 3 in the morning, with the road so quiet he could hear his own pulse, Jay found himself tapping the brakes. The engine rattled, coughed, then sputtered out like a candle blown too quick. The dashboard blinked once, twice, then went black. For a heartbeat, there was only the creak of settling metal and the hiss of the night pressing against the windows. Omar jolted awake with a grunt. "What the hell? Why'd we stop?" "Chase?" The throat was too dry to answer. He cranked the key. Dead silence. He punched the steering wheel once, twice. Teeth gritted. Lisa peeled her hoodie off her face, her eyes wide now, catching the reflection of the marker ahead. 66. Just that number hanging there in the dark. The forest beyond it seemed to lean. Closer, branches tapping the roof like fingers drumming in patience. "Try your phone, genius," Lisa snapped. Jay fumbled his into life. No bars, no GPS. Just the mocking glow of the lock screen showing 3:33 a.m. Omar checked his too dead. He tossed it onto the dash with a soft clack that sounded too loud in the tomb-quiet car. They sat for a minute, listening to each other's breathing. Then Lisa whispered, "Do you hear that?" Jay held his breath. Somewhere in the trees, a faint voice drifted in like a radio lost between stations, words bubbling under static. Then another voice joined it, closer, softer. A child crying, or laughing, or both. Omar's lips trembled. "It's just the wind, right?" "But the wind didn't call your name?" "But the wind didn't call your name, didn't giggle when you flinched. Promised to tell your secrets to the darkness if you didn't listen." Jay shoved open the door, stepping into the cold mist pooling off the shoulder. The forest swallowed the sound of his sneakers on the wet gravel. The mile marker glowed behind him, a lonely beacon on a road that suddenly felt a million miles from anywhere real. He didn't see the shape at first. Standing just beyond the tree line, he heard it, whispering his name like a lullaby only. His mother used to sing. A mother dead for 10 years. Buried 1,000 miles from this godforsaken stretch of road. Asterisk. Jay's breath hung in front of his lips in a mist that twisted toward the trees as if pulled by invisible fingers. He knew he should step back to the car, slam the door, wake Omar properly, drag Lisa into sense and laughter and warmth. But the voice beyond the trees tugged at him like a fishing line buried in his chest. Jay never told them ... He took one step forward, gravel crunching like dry bones. The trees swallowed him without a whisper. Behind him, Lisa sat bolt upright now, staring through the fogged window at the spot where Jay had vanished. Omar rubbed his temples. "Where's he going? Is he taking a leak or what?" But Lisa didn't answer. Her mouth had gone dry too. She pressed a palm to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes too wide, pupils swallowing the color. In that reflection, a shape leaned over her shoulder. A woman, gaunt, hair clumped against a rotted scalp. Lisa spun so fast she hit her head on the doorframe. No one there. Just Omar glaring at her like she'd lost her mind. Outside, Jay pushed deeper into the trees. The voice grew clearer, soft, breathless, the way his mother used to wake him as a boy. Don't lie to them, Jay. Tell them what you did. Tell them about the bridge. He stumbled on a route, catching himself against damp bark. His fingertips sank into the wood like it was flesh. He jerked back with a yelp, but the tree just stood there, mute, indifferent, dripping cold dew on his hair. He laughed, a crack in his throat that didn't sound like him. Maybe he'd fallen asleep at the wheel. Maybe this was a dream. But the voice didn't belong to any dream he'd ever had. It laughed, and the sound carried around him in a perfect circle, each tree echoing it back. He clamped his hands over his ears, but inside his head, it was louder. Tell them about the bridge, Jay. The girl in the river, his vision blurred. He saw it again, headlights off, stolen beers rattling under the seat. Da-da-da-da. The scream as tires slipped on rain-slick asphalt. The splash, then silence. No one ever knew. He'd washed the blood off the bumper before his parents woke up. No record, no charges, but the river had known. And now the trees knew too. Back at the car, Lisa couldn't stand it anymore. She threw open her door. The hinges squealed like a wounded animal. The air outside tasted like iron and old tears. Jay! She shouted, but the mist swallowed her voice whole. Omar was out beside her now, arms wrapped tight around himself. We should stay in the car. Should just wait till morning, Lisa. I swear to God. A sound shut him up. Not a voice this time, but a sharp, wet thump from the trees. Then another. Heavy, dragging footsteps. Lisa's heart punched her ribs so hard she thought it would crack bone. Out of the fog stumbled Jay, but he wasn't walking, more like he was being pushed by invisible hands. Head lolling, eyes wide, and leaking something black down his cheeks. His mouth moved, but made no sound. On his forehead, smeared in mud or blood, Omar couldn't tell, were crude letters. 66. Lisa's scream cut the night in half. Jay collapsed at Lisa's feet, knees hitting the wet gravel with a sickening crack that made Omar flinch backward so hard he nearly fell into the ditch. Lisa dropped to her knees, fingers brushing Jay's clammy face. He was whispering something. Lips cracked and trembling, but the words were jumbled. River, ... bridge. She knows ... forgive me. Fragments that made Lisa's gut twist because she knew Jay's secrets as well as he did. The late-night confessions on drunken dorm nights. The half-truths about that accident no one could ever pin on him. All the lies packed tight in Jay's chest like old dynamite. But now the highway had dug them out. Tearing secrets from his throat like weeds from dead soil. Omar paced in tight circles, muttering to himself. He refused to touch Jay. Refused to meet Lisa's eyes because he could hear it too now. The wind, except it wasn't wind anymore, but a chorus of wet voices, each one digging at the soft spots of his own memory. The scholarship he'd cheated. 4. The friend he'd framed for the drugs under the dorm mattress. His ears buzzed with a static hum that bent the night around him. Lisa's vision stuttered. She saw shapes between the trees, children with hollow eyes, women in wedding dresses drifting across the shoulder, a man in a highway patrol uniform whose head lolled at an angle too sharp to be natural. They watched her. They waited. They whispered her name, and the name she'd tried to bury since freshman year. The baby she'd lost in secret. The boyfriend she'd blamed and dumped. The lie that had clawed at her insides until it had no voice. Left to speak until now, Jay's hand shot up, clutching Lisa's wrist so hard her bones popped. His eyes snapped open, pupils swallowed whole by darkness. They want us to confess, he croaked. Or they won't let us leave. His voice was not his own, deeper, wet with static. Omar stumbled back, slipping on the slick gravel. He turned, bolted for the car, the only safe place. The only shell left between him and the things pressing against the night. But the car door wouldn't open. He yanked the handle until his knuckles split open. Inside the cab, the headlights flicked on by themselves. The dashboard clock spun backwards so fast, the digits blurred. The radio fizzed alive, a choir of whispers chanting his name. Over and over. Omar, Omar. Omar, ... Lisa dragged Jay to his feet, ignoring the blood where his nails dug into her skin. She shoved him against the hood, her own voice breaking. "What do we do, Jay? What do we do?" But he only laughed, a dry, hollow bark that wasn't laughter at all, but the bark of a man choking on his last breath. He pointed to the mile marker. It glowed brighter now, humming with a sickly green aura that bathed the whole shoulder in swampy light. We tell everything, and we stay here. Forever. Lisa's mouth opened and the words spilled out before she could stop them. Every betrayal, every lie, every cheap excuse she'd built, like armor to keep people from seeing her rot inside. She wept so hard she thought her lungs would drown in snot and salt. Jay's voice joined hers. Strangled confessions poured into the mist. Omar clawed at the window of the car, screaming his confessions at his own reflection until his throat tore raw. One by one, the shapes between the trees leaned closer, drinking every syllable like wine. And when the last secret left their lips, when the truth lay naked in the damp blackness, the voices fell silent. For a heartbeat, there was peace. The mile marker flickered once, twice, then went dark. The forest exhaled. The air warmed. The car's engine clicked to life on its own, purring as if nothing had ever been wrong. But Jay was dead. Gone where he sat, slumped against the hood. Mouth frozen in a half-smile that didn't reach his glazed eyes. Lisa touched his cheek, found it cold as the roadkill they'd passed hours ago. She didn't scream. She just got up, wiped her nose with her sleeve, met Omar's shell-shocked gaze. Wordless, they climbed back into the car. Lisa drove. The tires hummed over the asphalt like a lullaby. In the rear view, mile marker 66 faded into the mist. No one would believe them. No one would know the price paid for freedom. But deep down, they both knew the road never really let you go. Not once it had heard your true voice. Somewhere behind them, lost in the hush of pine trees and drifting fog, the voices waited for the next confession. The sign flickered back to life. A pale green beacon in the dark. Mile marker 66. The mile that knows what you hide. Hannah should have known better than to trust the shortcut. The old GPS flickered between promise and threat as she squinted at the cracked screen on the dashboard. It was Derek's idea. Let's take the scenic route, babe. Cut to hours. Off the drive. Less traffic. More time alone. Alone, that was the word he kept using. It felt like a threat now, drifting out here past midnight, miles from the last sign of life. Wrapped in mist so thick the headlights swallowed themselves whole in the passenger seat. Derek fiddled with the radio, twisting the knob back and forth. Through bursts of static and faint country twang that bled into whispers when the static grew sharp enough, Hannah tightened her fingers on the wheel until her knuckles cracked. Focus on the road, she told herself. Not on the text messages she'd read 2 weeks ago. It's not on the half apology, Derek mumbled when she caught him. Not on the ring still wrapped around her finger like a lie she couldn't unclasp. The shortcut. The cabin, the honeymoon they were forcing to life like a corpse they refused to bury. She wanted to believe it could fix things. But the trees pressed closer every mile, tall pines so dense they crushed any scrap of moonlight. She hadn't seen another car in over an hour. Derek finally snapped the radio off, filling the car with thick silence. He leaned back in his seat, arms folded like a sulking child. You're not even going to talk to me? Hannah's jaw twitched. She focused on the broken yellow lines flickering under the headlights, each one bending slightly before vanishing under the tires. I'm driving, she said. Her voice felt like a glass shard on her tongue. A sign materialized in the mist. So suddenly, she almost swerved. Detour scenic route ahead. An arrow pointed right down a narrower road that dipped into a hollow of fog so dense it might as well have been the mouth of a tunnel. Derek leaned forward, squinting at it. That's it. Told you. Trust me for once. But the sound stayed trapped in her ribs. She turned the wheel. Tires rolled onto the new road with a soft crunch, damp gravel under rubber. The main highway vanished behind them like a door swinging shut. Within minutes, the world shrank to the small, ghostly cone of light ahead of the hood. Trees blurred past. The GPS recalculated itself into nonsense, the arrow spinning in place. The voice guidance repeating, make a U-turn, ... make a U-turn, ... make a U-turn, ... double quotes, in a glitching monotone. Derek punched the screen. The voice stuttered, then cut out altogether. Hannah's pulse drummed in her temples. She couldn't shake. The feeling that the road under them was wrong somehow. Too narrow for a county road, too cracked for a maintained shortcut. She opened her mouth to say so when the forest broke. A clearing. When in the clearing, sitting like a wound beneath the pines, was a building, an old roadside diner. Its neon sign buzzing through the mist. Redwood Diner open 24/7. But the letters flickered, some missing entirely. RED___OD DIN _____24_ Derek whooped. Perfect.
At
Perfect. Let's stop. Coffee, maybe directions. Come on, Hannah. Live a little. Before she could protest, he was already unclipping his seatbelt, pushing the door open into the mist. Hannah watched him stride toward the flickering sign, his silhouette swallowed piece by the fog. She glanced at the fuel gauge, almost empty. Of course it was. She killed the engine, pocketed the keys, and followed him into the white veil, where the road ended and something worse began. The bell above the diner door gave a weak jangle, so muffled by the fog that Hannah thought she imagined it. Inside, the place smelled of old grease and something worse. Mildew clinging to vinyl booths, stale coffee turning to tar at the bottom of cracked mugs left on tables. A single overhead fan spun lazily, stirring the humid air but doing nothing. To push out the scent of a place abandoned by time, Derek sat on a stool at the counter, grinning like a boy caught sneaking candy. He'd found a mug and was filling it from a glass pot that looked older than the road outside. The pot hissed. The liquid inside a shade too dark, too thick. "Hey babe, check it out. Free coffee." "We should have done this detour thing sooner," he said. The words distorted by the steam curling from his mug. Hannah didn't move closer. Her eyes swept the place, the booths lined with tattered cushions split open to reveal yellowed stuffing. A jukebox in the corner that muttered low music despite being unplugged. And the counter itself, pocked with cigarette burns and scratched names. Hundreds of them, overlapping like a graveyard of forgotten apologies. Behind the counter, a man stood motionless. Or maybe he hadn't been there a moment ago. Hannah couldn't be sure. His skin looked waxy, like candle fat dripping under his diner cap. His eyelids were sewn shut with black thread, yet she felt him watching her, something deep in. Her mind shriveled under that sightless stare. "You folks look tired," the man rasped. His voice crawled across the ceiling tiles like cockroaches. "Long road behind you, longer road ahead." Derek chuckled, lifting his mug in a mock toast. "Yeah, man, you can say that again. We're headed to a cabin upstate, little honeymoon. Retreat, you know how it is." He shot Hannah a look meant to be charming. It landed like a slap. The man's head tilted. Threads tugged at his lids but did not part. "Honeymoon," he echoed, savoring the word like spoiled meat. "Cabin. Scenic route. Always the same." Hannah's tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her throat ached for water, but she knew if she touched anything here, it would cling to her skin forever. She edged closer to Derek, hissing, "We need to go." Now, Derek rolled his eyes. "Don't start." He turned back to the blind cook. "Hey, you've got gas." A gauge is flirting with empty. The man's grin cracked wider. From the corner of his cracked lips, something black dripped onto. His collar, plenty of gas. Out back, but the road, it never lets you leave empty-handed, or empty-hearted. He leaned close enough for Hannah to smell the rot blooming from his pores. "What did you bring, Hannah?" Her stomach lurched. She grabbed Derek's wrist so hard, he yelped, slopping his coffee across the counter. "We're leaving." Derek jerked free, eyes narrowing with that old cruel spark she hated so much, the one that came out when his pride got bruised. "You don't give the orders here?" "Hannah, sit down, have some damn coffee. We're not lost." But Hannah saw it then, in the greasy window behind the cook. The road didn't end behind the diner. It looped, curving back into the mist, back onto itself like a snake eating its tail. The same broken trees, the same hollow darkness. This wasn't a detour, it was a trap. She backed toward the door, heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm leaving. You can stay if you want, Derek. I'm done." The cook's laughter was dry as old bones cracking. The overhead light flickered once, twice, then the diner plunged into shadow, leaving only the buzzing neon sign outside. Red letters flickering through the fog. Redwood Diner Ope. Co. LPEOPE ... LPES face twisted in rage. He lunged for her wrist again, but Hannah was already gone. Pushing through the door into the choking fog, feet pounding gravel, lungs burning with the taste of betrayal and freedom and fear all twisted together. Behind her, the diner door swung wide as Derek's voice cut through the fog like a razor. "Hannah, don't you dare leave me here." Hannah. But the road swallowed him whole, and the sign buzzed its one word into the fog, mocking every traveler who ever thought they could escape. O-P-E-O-P-E-O-P-E ... Hannah didn't stop running until the diner's flickering sign was nothing but a dull glow behind the curtain of fog. Her lungs burned, throat raw from the cold, damp air slicing in and out. She stumbled to a halt in the middle of the road, if it could still be called that. Here the blacktop fractured into veins of gravel and dirt, then vanished entirely into a corridor of trees that leaned so close overhead they shut out the sky. She turned in a slow circle. Every direction looked the same, a tunnel of trees, a hush that pressed down on her heartbeat like a pillow over her face. No birds, no bugs. Just the faint crackle of that neon echo in her skull. O-P-E-O-P-E ... behind her. The mist shifted. Branches snapped. Derek's voice floated between the trunks, softer now, half pleading, half mocking. Hannah ... come back. I found the gas. ... You can't drive without me, baby. You know that. You need me. You always did, she pressed. Her palms over her ears until her knuckles turned white. She wouldn't listen. Not anymore. She stumbled forward, feet crunching dead pine needles. Her breath a hoarse mantra. I am leaving. The trees opened into another clearing. She froze. Her car sat there, parked at a neat angle under the same broken sign. Redwood Diner, OP. Her stomach lurched so violently she bent double, retching bile onto her shoes. She spun back the way she'd come, but the path had closed behind her. Only trees now knotted in black, roots like veins under the earth. Derek stood beside the car. Calm now, arms crossed, a shadow behind his smile. Told you can't leave. It's a circle, Hannah. You and me forever. The road doesn't end until you end it, is what he told me. Inside, he tapped his temple with one dirty finger. I know the way now. Hannah's throat worked around a word she didn't want to say. What ... way? He stepped closer, saw it under his collar, then a slick line across his throat, puckered and stitched like the cook's eyelids. And in his eyes, emptiness that used to be cruelty, now only hunger. You have to give it something it wants more than you, something that can't run away. He pulled a knife from his pocket, the same hunting knife he'd brought to the cabin trip, boasting about how a man should protect his wife. Now it looked like a rusted fang in his fist. It wants a promise, Hannah. You promised me forever. You said you'd love me to death. She backed away. She fell hard, ribs snapping a branch beneath her. The impact knocked air from her chest in a barking sob. Above her, Derek's shadow blocked out the sign's sputtering glow. I forgive you for reading my phone, he whispered, kneeling beside her. The blade traced her cheek, warm from his palm. And you forgive me for it ... everything. It's the only way out. In that frozen heartbeat, the whole truth burned through her fear. The road didn't trap people, it trapped lies. Every cheating vow, every unspoken threat, every rotten thought they buried in polite conversation. This place didn't want fuel. It fed on secrets, on sins too stubborn to die. And she was done feeding it. Her hand shot up, catching his wrist just as the blade bit her skin. She twisted hard. Derek's hiss turned to a grunt, then a howl as she drove her knee into his ribs. He buckled sideways, the knife clattering to gravel. She scrambled for it, fingers slick with pine sap and sweat. Derek lunged, teeth bared. Like an animal, she rolled under his weight, the forest spinning above her. The blade found his belly before she knew she'd moved a pop, a wet gasp, then heat soaking her hands as he shuddered against her chest. His eyes locked on hers, the last of him flickering like the diner's neon, a flash of regret and darkness. When she pushed him off, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She sat in the dirt, watching steam rise from the cut in his shirt, and she felt the road breathe around her. The trees leaned back a fraction. The mist drew away, opening a tunnel of clear night sky she hadn't seen in hours, maybe years if the diner had its way. She stood, clutching the bloody knife. She left his body where it fell, a stain on a road that could never have forever. She climbed behind the wheel of her car. The keys lay on the dash like they'd never left her pocket. The engine purred to life at her touch, obedient, eager. Hers alone in the mirror, she glimpsed the diner sign one last time. Oh, to flicker. And then the road unwound in front of her. Real road this time. No loops, no voice whispering her shame back to her. Just asphalt, stretching toward dawn. 4. The first time in years, she didn't feel lost.